When Robert Kahn and Vint Cerf developed some of the protocols that were at the heart of the early internet, they never could have imagined what it would one day become. At the time, the internet was this abstract thing, a global network of information. But over time, it's become what we know and rely on today. The internet has connected our world, bringing us closer than ever. It's compiled the world's knowledge, giving us the most complete telling of our history, and has given us answers to some of life's most thought-provoking and deep questions, such as, if a guy doesn't know how to ride a bike, could any girl love him? I'll let y'all think about that one for a second. Now, yes, the internet does give us the ability to watch our favorite YouTube videos, catch up on a new season on Netflix, but it does so much more than that. Organizations and websites like vote.org have made it easier than ever to register to vote and find a polling location. Job applications are increasingly moving online. And emails give 20-somethings a reason to never learn how to write a letter. And y'all, I know it looks a little difficult, but it's not that hard, y'all. Just put a stamp on the envelope, give a little lick, send it off. It's that easy. In an increasingly digital society, access to the internet is a requisite to participate in our world. And in a global pandemic, as our lives go from looking like this to this, we can no longer refute just how important the internet is. For those who don't have access to a doctor in their area, or for those that are of a high-risk category and so they can't visit their doctor right now, telehealth services give them the ability to continue with their healthcare. For small businesses that are struggling to stay afloat, online marketplaces and food delivery apps give them a lifeline for survival. And for us, all of us, the internet has been major for finding tips and things we could do to help fight this virus. The internet is no longer just a place where you post pictures of all the bread you make, and y'all, there have been so many pictures, but it's become an extension of who we are, an extension of our lives. Now, broadband is a term that's used to describe a high-speed internet connection. And despite its importance, so many people today don't have access to it. 31% of US households do not have access to a broadband connection. And a majority of these people are low-income and minority individuals. So we're seeing a growing divide among socioeconomic and racial lines. Cost is the leading reason a person would not have access to broadband. And so in the middle of a public health crisis, as so many people are losing their jobs or facing severe financial difficulty, I only imagine that this divide is getting wider and wider. For so many people, access to the internet is not a luxury. It's their path towards socioeconomic mobility. And what we're increasingly seeing is that those communities that lack access, those people, they're having to jump over hurdles just to survive and be a part of this world. There's no place or situation where I think the digital divide is most prevalent than the ways that it affects a person's access to education. Right now, many schools are going online, all in the hopes of curbing the spread of COVID-19. And while this is a really great move and measure, it must be done in a way that doesn't leave anybody behind. Now, let's look at what the digital divide really looks like, what it really is. This is a picture of two little girls sitting on the street of the Taco Bell, all with the hopes of using the free Wi-Fi nearby. And I want you to really take a look, take a pause, and analyze the details in this picture. You've got workers wearing masks, these girls on the floor. You start to really gain an understanding of what this means. In the middle of what is arguably the worst public health crisis in 100 years, these two little girls are sitting outside in the hot sun, not at their homes, in a Taco Bell parking lot, all with the hopes of getting their education. It's horrible. It should never be the case. This is a picture of Miss Annalise Solis and her 5 children. Miss Solis doesn't have an at-home internet connection. So the only way that her kids are able to participate in online learning is by sharing the one mobile hotspot that she has. If you and I get frustrated whenever a Netflix episode takes more than a few minutes, a few seconds to load, imagine the frustration of not being able to participate in your classes or finish your work because of slow, inadequate internet. The truth is that this situation is nothing new. This didn't just start happening because of the pandemic. It's been going on for years now. 70% of teachers nationwide before this pandemic were assigning homework that required an internet connection. And 17% of students have said that they've struggled to complete their work because they didn't have adequate access to the internet or a computer. In my hometown of Laredo, Texas, I've been seeing this issue for years. In 2017, Laredo was named the worst connected city in the United States, with about a third of residents lacking an at-home broadband connection. And last year, I sat down and spoke with one of these students. I wanted to learn more about what their experiences actually were. And what they told me was horrible. Every day, having to get up extra early so that they could do their work using the school Wi-Fi. If they didn't finish by then they take their lunch break off to continue to work and use that connection. If by that point they still weren't done, then they stay at school extra late, doing all that they can. And if even by that point they had not finished, then they do what they could. Going to a library, going to a fast food restaurant. And if by the end of the night they couldn't finish all of their work, which is common for students, work takes time, then they'd have to start the cycle all over again. Waking up early the next morning to get work done, and over again and over again. Missing out on sleep, having a constant stress about how they were going to finish their homework. That's the reality for so many people. And it's not just a reality for these people we've talked about today. There are stories like it that can be heard and found all across the country. Think about that. A student shouldn't be held back because of what they don't or do have access to. Access to the internet should not be the thing that determines a student's future success. We have to change that. Now, the good thing is that there is some work being done to help close the digital divide in the context of this pandemic. Those 2 girls we saw earlier, they were connected with their local school district and were given hotspots so they could complete their work. And in Laredo, the school districts have been working towards ensuring that every student has the resources they need for online learning. These are great steps, but we have to keep working to tackle the issues that are at the very core of the digital divide. How do we do that? What do we do? Well, it starts with looking at broadband's connectivity issue. Across the US, there are tribal lands and rural areas that don't even have a broadband connection. They don't even have the infrastructure that's necessary to support it. This is largely because internet service providers have deemed these areas unprofitable, unworthy for any investment. And so the reality is that we have these communities of people but are completely disconnected from the internet. And in this pandemic, disconnected from the rest of the country. Now, the government must, can, and should take action to make sure that every single American has access. And this wouldn't be a new action. This wouldn't be something that hasn't been done before. When electricity was first being installed in the US, a lot of the deployment revolved around urban areas, these densely populated areas. And over the years, we began to notice that rural areas were largely being left out. And so it wasn't until the government took action and local advocates started creating their own change that we got into a point where every single American has access to electricity. We don't even have to think twice about whether our area has access or not. That needs to be the reality that we create for a broadband connection. We also have to look at broadband's cost issue. According to a study by New America, across Europe, Asia, and North America, the United States is the area with the highest monthly broadband costs. A way that we can help remedy this is by pushing for more municipal-run broadband networks. These are networks that are owned and operated by the local community. And in many cases, they've provided faster internet speeds at lower, more affordable costs. But the catch with this is that so many states across the country have laws that restrict communities from starting their own networks. You can see the states here in red are the ones that have these restrictions. Now, what this does, essentially, is that it restricts these people from seeking out the resources and opportunities that could expand their access. Another thing we could do, we could push for greater price transparency. For a lot of Americans, the price that they see when they're going to be signing up for broadband is not the price that they'll end up paying. When you factor in hidden fees, modem fees, and so much more, you end up paying a lot more than you really thought. We have to push for greater price transparency to ensure that consumers know exactly what they're paying for from the start. That way, we give consumers more power and more of an ability to really choose what option is best for them and what options are actually affordable. And lastly, we need to collect more data on the current state of the digital divide. The way that the government collects data to see how many people in the US have access to broadband is through a self-reported filing that internet service providers fill out called Form 477. On Form 477, the area unit of measurement are census blocks, like the one that you see right here. Now, these census blocks could be about the size of a city block in urban areas, and they could even be as large as hundreds of square miles in rural areas. If it is found that at least one person in a census block has access to the internet, or at least one person could have access, then the whole census block is counted as having access to the internet. Think about that. When we look at this larger census block, if only one person in that area has access, or only one person could have access, then the whole area is marked and counted as having access. As you can imagine, this has led to severe overcounting. When using 2016 data, the federal government estimated that there were about 25 million people that didn't have access to broadband. But a 2018 study by Microsoft found that there were 163 million people that were not using the internet at broadband speeds. This means that millions of people are not being counted. And if they are not counted, then we don't really have a great view of what this digital divide currently looks like. It's a lot larger than what we really think it is. And so when we fail to get an actual accurate view of what this is, then we won't be able to properly allocate our resources or create solutions that can truly close the digital divide. As we continue to advance in our technology and innovate, we have to accept the inevitable. The internet is a major part of our lives. From job applications to educational opportunities, access to the internet brings a whole amount of benefit to our lives. But for those people that don't have access, those people that are having to sit on city streets, or use hotspots, or wake up early and stay up late to use the internet, these benefits are nowhere near equitable. As we continue to move forward, we have to ask ourselves a very simple question. Will we close this digital divide, ensuring that every American has access to the same opportunities that the internet brings as others? Or will we leave people behind? Thank you.